Welcome to the Talk With Kiet podcast, where we connect people, ideas, and capital to help make a difference in the world. Today, I'm on with my pal, Rick Hu, the founder and CEO of Midas Wealth. Rick and I will talk about his entrepreneurial journey, as well as how to plan for financial freedom. As we all know, right, it's part of New Year. The last episode we talked about Korea, and I'm sure as part of your resolution, it's about financial planning. So, Rick, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Kit. Thank you for having me.
So, as tradition for this podcast, we usually talk about origin story. So, what is Rick's origin story?
Okay, sure. So, I think my origin story would really start with my parents. My parents are originally from China, Toisan, China, and they came to America in the late 1970s. And in 1985, my parents had me. I'm their only child, firstborn and only child. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. Lived in a very blue-collar family. My father was originally a chef. My mother was a seamstress at a factory. And growing up, my parents wanted me to be a doctor, lawyer, or engineer, and I failed them. I'm sure some of you that may be watching, whether we're minorities, we would agree. Most of our parents probably got into a room in the 70s and 80s and said, let's promote doctor, lawyer, or engineer.
That's right.
Yep. And growing up, I'm a germaphobe, so doctors didn't really work out. And although I love to read, just memorizing case studies wasn't a passion of mine, so I didn't really go into law. But I was really good at math, and I loved business. So in college, I studied finance, and eventually, graduating in 2007, right before the Great Recession, I entered the world of finance. And today, I'm a wealth management advisor, and we're a firm of 10 at Midas Wealth.
So, what would you say some of the secrets in your upbringing that drove that success? Because you've done pretty well now, right? You run a sizable wealth management platform, right? You have clients that are billionaires, right? Like, what were some of the tricks of the trade that got you to where you are now?
I think when I get asked what were the secrets to my success, it really comes down to how many times I failed. I just probably failed harder and more times than most people out there. There's really no secret. It starts with hard work. We all try to work hard in the beginning, and then eventually you have to get more efficient and work smart. If there's something I can credit my parents, and unfortunately growing up, my parents worked really, really hard, where I wasn't really raised by my parents. I was raised by my grandmother. And usually before I would wake up, my parents would go to work. And by the time I was put to bed, my parents were still working. And I never really spent much time with my parents. Now, they taught me and instilled the importance of hard work. But unfortunately, they didn't really share with me the importance of family, the importance of understanding the value of your time. But the one thing I would credit my parents is although they were really strict, they always allowed me to dream big. No matter if I told my dad and my mom I'm not going to be a doctor, a lawyer, or engineer, they weren't upset. Instead, they always allowed me to really get creative and find out what my passion is. But I think tracing back to 2007, a little bit about my background, when I entered finance, I originally wanted to go into investment banking. In 2007, when I was in school, I asked many of my upperclassmen in finance, what is the best industry to join? And many of them said, go into investment banking. And initially, I wasn't sure why, but I realized probably it was because of the prestige and the money.
That's right.
And in 2007, when I graduated, I was fortunate enough to interview for many companies, had an opportunity to go investment banking, but it was my last interview to go into wealth management that eventually changed my life. The managing director that interviewed me asked me, Rick, when it comes to finance, what type of industry or companies are you interviewing for? I said, mostly investment banking. And he said this one statement that really impacted me. He said, There are similarities with wealth management and investment banking. Investment banking help big corporations make lots of money. Wealth management and financial planning help people make lots of money. Which one can you see yourself being more passionate about? And at that moment, I decided, hey, there's a new industry that I've never heard of, which is wealth management. And that's what I wanted to pursue. So ultimately, I decided to get into wealth management in 2007. And I've been doing this for over 15 years now.
So was it the mentality to serve, and especially to serve a community? Because listen, both you and I are immigrants, right?
Yep.
I think the challenge I do see is, whether it's wealth building, wealth things in general, it's 80% psychology, 20% mechanics.
Yep.
And the way we were raised or taught as young immigrants, in terms about money, in terms about financial planning, is very different than the reality of it, right? So what was it that?
It was my purpose and my passion, and even still today, is the motivation to serve. During that interview, the managing director mentioned that said, hey, wealth management, financial planning, although it's really important, unfortunately, minorities, especially you and I being Asian, the Asian community have a lack of financial literacy and knowledge in this area. Rick, do you believe you have what it takes to help your community? And I truly believed it. And Kit, you and I may know, I went home that evening and told my parents that I'm going to leave or not even join an industry of investment banking, and I'm going to go into financial planning, financial services, wealth management, expecting my parents to be proud and excited. Instead, they were angry and pissed. They said, what do you mean? Financial planning, financial literacy, those are things that our community do not need. In fact, all we think about is cash, work hard, and real estate. I think this is a terrible decision, son. And they thought I was going to sales, and they weren't really supportive at all.
Yeah. So what are some of the psychology, mentality to help build like financial freedom? What are some of the key pillars that you see from your clients? Because listen, I think the average net worth of your clients like 20 million plus, right? So you definitely deal with a lot of financially freed individuals. Like, what are some of the things that you observe?
What I observed over the years is, as we work with clients of higher net worth or even success, education is important, but it's not the most impactful area. It's actually how much they value their time. I realize that the most successful people out there, they don't only work hard, they know how to work smart, they know how to delegate, but they understand the true value of time. For many of us, I think also in life, we have a choice. We can think abundantly, or we could think have scarcity. Unfortunately, most people, when they start out in financial literacy and planning, they have a scarcity mindset. They think a lot of negative thoughts. And because of those negative thoughts, it holds them back. So the most successful people out there, they think positively, they have a strong, powerful mindset, they understand the value of time. And when they commit to something, they make a promise, they execute well. They follow through and execute well. It's not really about how hard we try and achieving success. It's the fact that they don't give up, they don't quit. It's intentionality that differentiates people that are successful versus people that may not.
Got it. And so for someone starting out though, like what are some of the mechanics they need to put in place? Like, is it really about saving? Is it really about having a 401k? Like, what is it?
So if I was to give general advice, and none of this that we're talking is any like financial specific advice, not knowing who we're specifically talking to.
Yeah.
I think first and foremost, it's really important that we have to understand our mindset, right? I think the quote is by John C. Maxwell. The enemy of learning is knowing. The enemy of learning is knowing. If you believe you know it all, you and I will never learn and get better. So it's having humility. It's willing to learn. So once we have that mindset of abundance and not scarcity, our goal is to learn and educate ourselves. And once you educate yourself and you get into the world of financial planning and future, I think it's really important to do what is called a budget sheet. and understanding how taxes work. Because I always tell people, it doesn't matter how much you make, it matters how much you keep. It doesn't matter how much we make, it's matter how much we keep. So if we do a budget sheet and we understand how taxes work, how much we make versus how much we keep, then after we have that delta of how much we have on a monthly cash flow, we really need to understand our expenses. Now, when it comes to expenses, there are what we call fixed expenses, variable and luxury expenses, right? Fixed expenses are what we call necessities of life, food and shelter. Variable expenses may be dining out, shopping, vacation. Now, variable expenses, we can control them if we're really, really disciplined. And then what we have left is what we call surplus. If we don't have any surplus, it's a matter of being disciplined. It could be an income problem or it could be an expense problem. But finally, with that surplus, we need to understand the philosophies of building wealth. So there are two philosophies I generally teach. One is called the 50-30-20 rule. 50% of our income can be set aside for necessities of life, food and shelter. 30% can be set aside for variables. And then 20% must be saved for our future. 20% must be saved and invested for our future. If we're not saving at least 20% of our current dollars for our future self will not live the lifestyle of our current self. Now, that's just normal planning. But if you truly want to achieve something called FIRE, financial independence, retire early, which we hear all the time. A lot of people, especially younger families and professionals, says, Rick, what is FIRE, financial independence, retire early? Is taking your ratios of not 50-30-20 and doing 20 towards food and shelter, 20 towards variables and luxury, and save and invest 60%. If we can save and invest 60% of our income on an average of 10 years, and we're getting a compounding interest rate of 10%, hypothetically, in theory, many of us can retire in 10 to 15 years just through consistent discipline and habits. So those are some philosophies we would generally teach.
But with the reality, with like the certainty of the economy, inflation, all that stuff, like, so you save the money, but what do you do with it?
Sure.
Like, how do you plan for that, given all the uncertainties?
Sure. Now, I don't want to overwhelm people, especially early on a Friday morning, but it's actually quite simple. But I think of 9 different boxes, and my brain works kind of weird. If you ever seen that show called on Netflix called Queen's Gambit, where you see all these different chess moves, right? I see moves before it happens, and I see probability of success, statistic likelihood, and fail rate. But if we have that surplus, we need to understand there's short-term dollars, midterm goals, and long-term. So we just have to understand what is our short-term goals, our midterm goals, and our long-term goals. Then once you understand just time frame of how we want to invest, I would then categorize saving and investing as in safe dollars. What are areas or currency that we put away that must be safe and reliable? What are risky dollars? Risky dollars mean we can take a certain level of risk that generally generate a higher rate of return than the average inflation. And then, Kit, you and I talk about it all the time. What are home run dollars? Home run dollars may be not investing in your business, but investing other people's business. So first is time frame, short, mid, and long term. Then is safe dollars, aggressive dollars, and home run dollars. And then finally, which is more complex, is understanding how dollars are taxed. There are taxable dollars, right? Dollars that generally we have to pay taxes on an ongoing basis. There are tax deductible dollars where you and I could put money in there and we can actually reduce our tax liability. And then there are what we call tax-free dollars. Tax-free dollars where the money can grow tax deferred and can be tax-free in later years. So if we understand time frame, if we understand risk, and we understand efficiency with taxes, then we can certainly understand how to achieve success in our goals.
That's very helpful. But the question is, because there's a difference between knowing, understanding, and doing.
Yep.
Right. What do people need to put in place to make sure that, like, should everyone hire a financial advisor? Like, what are some of your suggestions in terms of things that people can do to help them take action, right? Like for me, like financial planning, it's like staying in shape. Right? You want to stay in shape, but you're not willing to do all the activities. You understand to stay in shape, you eat well, eat less, and exercise. But a lot of people unfortunately don't do it.
Yep. Agree. Agree. So everyone's approach is a little different. And objectively, I would just share with you what I would do. So if someone said to me, Rick, you need to, stay in shape, whether it's exercising, someone like me would probably hire a personal trainer because I want to get to my goal faster and easier and more efficient. If someone said, Rick, you really need to manage and understand how to eat healthy and watch your diet, I'm probably going to hire a nutritionist that knows what they're talking about. Now, when it comes to the world of financial planning, I don't agree that everyone needs a financial professional. I would have to say not everyone needs it because every one of us are in different stages in our life. But what I do think it's very important, especially with everyone's different personalities, every one of us should do what is called just like a checkup. A checkup. So like kid, as you and I are getting older and we have young kids, every year I want to see my doctor at least once, if not twice a year, because I understand the importance of health, time, and no matter how successful I am, if I don't manage my health, and that's something I find very common with very successful people, they're very mindful of their health and they want to stay in this world a very long time. We need to go see a medical professional, a medical professional. So my doctor is going to do a full body exam, a checkup and say, Rick, your body looks great. You're going to live a long, healthy life. Until next time, maybe in 6 months or 12 months, we're going to see each other again. Although that checkup today may mean I'm going to be fine, doesn't mean a year or 5 years from now it's going to be the same. I would encourage many of the audience that are watching, go speak to a financial professional that you may trust and just do a due diligence. Like, hey, am I on track for my goals? Am I putting and investing my money in an efficient manner to maybe buy my first home, save for my children's education, on track to retire? Because how can we hit a target, a goal, if we don't even know what it looks like? We need to stress test it. So speaking to a financial professional for the first time to find out where we are and where we want to be and getting that confirmation is important. And afterwards, there are two types of people. One that are what I call do it yourself. If you're a person that do it yourself, great. If you have time, you have passion, and you like doing it yourself, do it yourself. But if you're like me, I don't have much time. I am passionate, but in fact, it's smarter if we delegate it to others than hire a professional to do it for you. So that's
Yeah.
feedback.
Just sidetrack a little bit because you
Sure.
talked about family, you talk about health. How do you manage all of that? Like, I'm sure you have a very stressful day, stressful life. You run a large business, large team. How do you balance? How do you find balance in life?
It's great question. It's about work-life integration. Work-life integration, and it's about focus. I think there was a interview done with Warren Buffett and Bill Gates. I think it was Larry King that was doing an interview with Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, asking them what is the right one word that really determines how you achieve your maximum success. And both of them wrote that word down without even thinking of what to write pre-question. And both of them wrote the same word: focus. Focus. So I have a extremely disciplined schedule.
Which I've seen.
Yes. I wake up kind of like within 30 minutes on the dot every day, whether it's weekday or weekend. And there's something that I would encourage many of the viewers. If you wake up differently on a weekday versus a weekend, that's a problem. Our body should be conditioned to discipline and habits. Our body don't understand that tomorrow is Saturday and Sunday we get to sleep in, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday we should wake up early. So I have an extremely disciplined schedule. I wake up within 30 minutes every single morning. I do my workout every morning because I need to stay in shape so that I have the stamina and endurance to seize the day. And then when I go into work or work from home, I have an extremely disciplined schedule where it's about 10 hours of back-to-back meetings. And then once I'm done with work, I spend time with what's most important to me, my family. So I try to be present as much as I can, but it's about focus and being really, really disciplined with our time.
No, that's very helpful advice. And what would you say, when you were growing up and how your parents were raising you, and now you're raising also Asian kids? Like, how has the times changed as Asian immigrants? Well, actually, your kids are not, right? They're American born.
Yeah, that's a great question as well. Um, when I was younger, I didn't understand this, but today, as you and I get older and we're wiser,
Yeah,
I realized growing up, although I did not have much, my parents gave me as much as they could have, and it was plenty. It was plenty. I remember just playing tag, going to the park, collecting rocks. That's my upbringing in childhood, and I
yeah.
had plenty of fun. Um, and I think growing up, although my parents weren't really there for me, uh, initially I thought they didn't want to spend much time. And it wasn't that they didn't want to spend much time, it's because they didn't understand the difference between active income and passive income. They just didn't have the financial literacy to afford them the independence to spend time with their only child. But growing up, my parents taught me probably more of a scarcity mentality: save, save, save. Every dollar we earn, we try to save it. But as I shared in the past with other podcasts, it's like playing the game of Monopoly. And the game of Monopoly is, that board game. If you and I, Kit, are playing Monopoly, and my strategy is just earning an income, saving it, and collecting the cash and passing go, keep getting my $200, I probably lose to you if I play Monopoly. They didn't really understand this. But so when I graduated from school and started working in financial literacy, I actually had to really help and teach my parents. And as you and I can probably experience the same experience growing up, it's really hard to teach your parents what you know, especially if they look at you as their child.
That's right. That's right. Especially Asian parents, I would
Yep,
say.
yep. Especially Asian parents. And then it took me a few years to prove myself. And my parents really finally understood the importance of having humility and learning. And then my parents then ultimately started asking me for more advice, asking me for more advice because, that scarcity mentality, especially with inflation, cash is no longer king. Cash, in fact, depreciates. Cash should be invested as an asset class that beats inflation. And then because of the early years of my success in my career and building assets for my family, my parents started asking me for advice. And fortunately, today, I'm able to help expedite my parents' financial future and change their trajectory as well.
And how do you teach your kids financial literacy? Because the problem is in the school system today, they don't teach you about life, right? They don't teach you how to manage stress. They don't teach you how to balance a checkbook. Like, how do you teach your kids?
I think the best way to teach our kids is by showing them what we do, showing them what we do. Instead of teaching my kids to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, forcing them to be successful, I'd rather teach them to be happy, kind, and be a contributor to society. But what I teach my kids is there's nothing given to us in life. Everything is earned. So when I was younger, because my Asian parents didn't spend much time with me, you know what they would do? Every time they saw me, they would either feed me a lot of food,
That's
it's,
right.
it's their display of love, or they would give me money and say, hey, son, go buy something nice for yourself,
That's right.
because they didn't have time. So what I teach my kids today is by spending more time with them, right?
That's
Our
right.
kids don't really need money or understand the importance of money at this age. My son is 5 years old. My twin daughters are 3. They don't understand the difference between a coin and a piece of paper, such as a dollar. They just know if daddy and mommy are going to be around. So, as Bruce Lee said, don't give your kids what you never had. Teach your kids what you were never taught. So, what I teach my kids today is the importance of hard work. If my kids want to buy a toy, we say, hey, you have a lot of toys already. Before I buy you your next toy, because of how much we have, let's give away a toy. Let's give away a toy. If my son says, daddy, mommy, can I have pizza this week? Sure, you have to earn it. Did you make your bed this morning? Did you make your bed this morning? Now, I think my son at his age, learning these discipline and habits is very important because I'm trying to teach my kids the importance of responsibility.
Yeah. No, but I like that a lot, right? Don't give your kids what you never had. Teach your kids what you never taught. That's a great line. I'm gonna borrow that going
Sure,
forward.
sure. And I always think about this, right? As parents, I think it's a lot harder to enforce our kids our own ideology, saying, "Son, you should do this type of profession." Instead, it's easier for us to teach our kids curiosity, creativity, and how to have abundance thinking. Abundance,
No, that's
right?
right. I mean, one of the challenges I see with a lot of parents, they try to mold their kids to meet them, and I'm like, no, they're all different, right? It's you helping them embrace who they are.
Yep. The sense of identity and confidence. Because the
That's
more
right.
we try to tell our kids what they should do, the less confidence they have in life. And as parents, and this is just my humble opinion, we're supposed to raise our children to a point in life where they don't need us. They don't need us or rely on us. They can go out there in society and be independent on their own. So I hope something like this that we're doing today. Who knows, in 20 years, if my children get to watch this, they'll understand the things I taught them when they were younger.
Yeah. Now, pivoting a bit on the Asian community, right?
Yep.
Michelle Yeoh won the Golden Globes. Congrats to Asian representation.
Yep.
Like, where do you see our progress as Asian minorities in America?
I think compared to where we were when you and I were growing up in the 70s and 80s, we've made a lot of progress. But in order for us to continue to grow in society and have more inclusion, we need to grow and diversify further. I think, in my humble opinion, many of us are in certain occupations and professions where we should explore outside. I love seeing an Asian comedian. I love seeing an Asian musician, an Asian athlete. And I think it's about, breaking what is called the norm. I remember when I first joined our industry, wealth management, I was one of the few and only Asian Americans in my industry, in the region and in the nation. I felt lonely. I felt like life was difficult, and I felt like I wasn't good enough. And Which is why my parents said, "You probably shouldn't be in wealth management. You shouldn't be in wealth management." And a little bit about my early stories, and I know this is live, so for whoever is a viewer watching, my journey is probably similar to many of you, but it's much more different than you probably can imagine. My first 6 months, I failed in financial planning, wealth management. And being live sharing this is something that I'm extremely comfortable sharing, because if I was just like constant growth, 45-degree angle, then I think many people would say this is not something possible. But I failed. And I remember the reason why I failed wasn't because I wanted to fail, was because of my upbringing. My parents are from eastern part of the world, China. They taught me the ways of the East, which I needed to apply into the ways of the West. So as an example, kid, growing up, I don't know about you, but my parents told me to, when you talk, don't look at people in the eyes. It's rude. It's disrespectful.
That's
But
right.
in Western America, initially when I was in financial planning, I didn't want to look at people in the eyes because I didn't want to be rude or disrespectful. But in reality, it was about being dishonest and lack of confidence. My parents taught me to not speak up and to be more passive. But in Western society, if I don't speak up, I don't have any creative ideas or anything to bring to the table. So my first 6 months, unfortunately, I only acquired 4 clients. And during that time, the average advisor was acquiring 4 clients a month. It took me 6 months to acquire 4 clients. My parents wouldn't even be my client because they thought I was bad at what I was doing.
Yeah.
And then when I was put on probation, and I told my parents one night that, hey, I don't think I'm good at this. And I was just hoping for one single word of encouragement from my Asian parents. to change my career and trajectory, they said exactly what I needed to hear. They said, son, you should quit. You should quit. And then as they said the same words as my peers, that I'm not good at this, I should quit, or people don't need financial planning, I asked my parents why. It says, this is too hard for you. Come and join the family's business. At that time in 2007, my father went from being a chef to being a business owner. Come join the family's business. And then in my mind, I realized I only had two paths in my future. One was to live a life of others, where everyone's going to tell me what to do in life and how I should act and perform. Or I'm going to live a life for myself. And then those 30 days, which I was put on probation, I just said to my parents, Dad, Mom, fine, I will quit, like you said. But can I ask you for one small favor before I do? So what's that? Can I at least show you what is it that I do? You've never given me a chance to teach you financial literacy. You've never given me a chance to show you the impactful work that I've learned in my career. And my parents thought that I was going to fail and quit anyway. They finally took a meeting with me. And in that meeting, I asked them, tell me about your retirement goals. You know what they said? I don't know about you, kid. They said, you're my retirement goal, son.
That's right.
And I said to my parents, I said, Dad, Mom, it's ironic. You're my retirement goals to my parents, right? As a dependent child to my parents, I was living under their roof. I said, Dad, Mom, I'm your retirement goal. You're my retirement goal. And they started laughing, but it wasn't funny to them. But I said, Dad, Mom, you don't have a retirement goal, because they didn't know what retirement planning was, like a 401k or an IRA. I said, Dad, Mom, what are your knowledge about taxes? They did not know. And then after like 2 hours of having an open conversation, which was probably one of the best moments in my life, they finally accepted my feedback. And I say this all the time. When you and I are younger, I think younger professionals, younger in age, younger in mindset, people like to share or show the things they have. But when you become a parent, and if there's one thing you can brag about, is brag about how wonderful your children are. Brag about how wonderful your children are. So, because there's nothing in my life on a material standpoint that is more proud of than my own children. So after having that amazing meeting with my parents says, hey, you should talk to my friends about this stuff. You should talk to your aunts and uncles about this stuff. You should talk to other people that I know about this stuff. They went from thinking, hey, son, you should quit this industry, to actually having the humility to learn and said, this is incredible. You should help others in our community. And those 30 days really changed my career, because I went from being on probation, acquiring 4 clients in 1 month. In that 1 month, I acquired, I think, 10 clients, and I survived. And then the rest is history.
Nice. And so, in your view, though, is there more opportunity for Asians to unite more as a community?
Absolutely. I think growing up as Asian, at least for me, I don't know if this is true for everyone, we need to understand that we are not each other's competition. I'm not competing against someone else. I'm running my own race. Another story to share with you growing up, I remember my parents were really obsessive with math. They said, son, you have to be really good at math. And I was. And in elementary school, I won an award in the district in math contests, but I won second place. And when I came home to my parents, I said, Dad, Mom, I won. And they were so proud of me, but they realized I won silver and not gold. The first follow-up question they asked me was, who won gold? Who was first place? And I'll share with you, kid, I was really happy to share the person that won gold was my best friend, Jerry. Jerry, my best friend, won gold, I said to my parents. And my parents are really good friends with Jerry's parents. And I thought they would be like, yes, Jerry won first, you won second, it's okay. You know what they said? They said, you got to do better. Unacceptable. And then almost to a point where they compared me to Jerry, just like they compared me to my cousins, just like they compared me to every one of their friends' kids. And that's not right. Why are we competing against each other? Why are we constantly comparing ourselves to others? That's how we can't find happiness, running your own race. So I remember the following year, I worked really, really hard, and I actually won first place in math. And then they said, good, now stay there. Almost to a point where Jerry and I were competing against each other. But in fact, imagine we said, hey, let's collaborate, let's study, let's learn our different math skills. I was strong in addition and multiplication. He was strong in division and other areas. Let's kind of share ideas. I really think we can go further. So I think the Asian community, instead of having scarcity mentality, we should think abundantly. We should think about the other communities, like minorities. Many times when I speak to minorities, they have abundance thinking. And when I see the majority of America, some of the most successful people, they always share ideas. Because there are three types of currency, in my opinion. Number one is simply money. And that is in my opinion, the lowest value of currency. Lowest value. Now you're like, Rick, what do you mean? You're in finance.
Yeah.
Now, if you think about it, money, in my humble opinion, is human made.
That's right.
It was created as a form of currency in exchange for service or good. Like, for example, like if I need a haircut, I'm going to give my money to my barber. Right? I'm not cutting my own hair because my time is much more costly than that. But if I'm really hungry, I'm going to give my money to the restaurant to buy food. Now, if you and I were stranded on an island and there's no one else there and we were starving, and then a light beams and says, hey, you can have $100 or you can have this plate of food. If you choose the money, you unfortunately do not understand the importance of currency. So obviously, it's about exchanging for service or good. So that's the first form of currency. Now, when you get to a level of success, what's even more important than money is intellectual currency, right? There are often times where I'm doing business with people. It's not about the exchange of money. It's about the exchange of ideas. Why do people go to college or go to school and spend money to learn? Why do people hire coaches? Some of the best athletes in the world, they have a coach to learn because they want to expedite their trajectory and their journey to their destination. So the number two is intellectual capacity, right? Oftentimes, I find that even more important than exchange of money. And then the most valuable currency, in my opinion, is relationships. Because there is no money out there for me that I can exchange for some of the closest friends and family I have in my life. I know that if God forbid something happened yesterday because it already passed, I go to my best friend and I say, hey, best friend, I lost my home. Can I stay here the next few days? My best friend will say yes. So there is no money when it comes to exchanging relationships. So if we really understand those three levels of currency, intellectual, and relationships, we really can understand how to be successful in life.
Yeah. No, you're right on. And I think part of I do see more unity when we had those hatred crimes on Asians, right? And I do see Asians now slowly coming together. But I think as a community, to your point, is we're not competing with each other. Like we need to all work together. And some of these other minority groups that I'm very proud of, where they stick together,
Yes.
right? They help each other, and you can see that in a big way, right? And I think in growing up as Asians, you kind of missed. Well, we had that when we were kids, right? At least, you and I, we grew up going to Grand Street Park, Cherry Park, like we're all hanging out in the same park. We're all like united, right?
Yes.
But somehow, as we grew up, we kind of forget about that.
Forget about this. Yep. And I think it's because of everyone is divided. I think it's about just understanding the importance of relationship. And like you mentioned, it's so incredibly wonderful seeing like other minority groups having that abundant thinking and supporting one another. Now, I will share with you, I do work with a lot of Asians. I have a lot of Asian friends, clients, and community, and they have the abundance thinking. They're constantly supporting each other. They have a business idea and they're investing it together to grow. They have an opportunity. They're sharing ideas and resources. Not everyone thinks that way. It's the future of our community is thinking abundantly. But if we have a scarcity mindset, those individuals unfortunately won't see the future like you and I see it.
Yeah. Now, am I right to understand that you're actually possibly working on a book because a lot of your knowledge is amazing? So are you still working on a book? Like when is that coming out?
Um, so I've been working on this book for over 2.5 years. In fact, it was completed a year ago, but I'm still editing it today. Still editing it today. I haven't just pressed print yet. The book was something I came up with in 2020. So in 2020, during COVID, because we were in shutdown, I was unable to go to work physically, so I had to work from home. Now, Kit, like you, I have young children. At that time, my son was 3 years old, and my twin daughters were one. We were in a 3-bedroom house with 3 kids, with my wife and I, and chaos beyond chaos. I think there is a saying: the people that are most successful in this world, they can be calm in times of chaos. I certainly can tell you I was not calm during that period. During that type of craziness, I think it was like one night I just couldn't sleep, and I realized, unfortunately, during COVID, I had clients, I had friends, I had family members that unfortunately passed away, and tomorrow's not promised for any one of us. So I just sat there and I just thought, what would I like to do? And I created my own bucket list, and that bucket list was write a book. The title of the book is called Unleashed. Unleashed. Live every day like you'll die tomorrow, so that only then will you actually start living today. Only then will you actually start living today. The problem I see with a lot of people is most people procrastinate. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it next week. I'll do it next month. I'll do it next year. How do you know there's a next year? How do you know? But if we mentally think today is a gift, tomorrow is not promised. In fact, I can pass away in the next hour, then we would actually appreciate every day, every hour, every minute, every second of our life. So in the book, I talk about just mental mindset. I talk about what it means to grow up as a minority. I talk about how to achieve financial independence, freedom. It starts with our own mind, right? It starts about understanding the difference between greed and fear, not to be greedy. We need to understand that life is enough, not constantly chase more and more and more. If we can have a life of simplicity and not chase, we can have enough. But I just find that oftentimes people, although we don't have shackles on our arms and our legs, mentally, our mindset, we do. We do. And I think it's Benjamin Franklin that said this. There's a quote: most people die when they're 20, but they do not get buried until they're 70. Most people die in their 20s, but they do not get buried until their 70s. So in the book, I wrote that book as motivation to really share my story. But hopefully one day when my kids grow up, they'll pick up that book and read it. Now, in life, you always have to have fans, and you also have to have somewhat haters. I'm kidding. But my wife is my biggest critic. She said, "Honey, why are you writing this book, spending all this hours and hours on it? No one's going to read your book." And I hope that when I do press print, it'll be impactful. Even if it's impactful to one person, that's all I want it to be.
No, that's right. And this is a great preview to the book. Listen, for the audience, look forward to Rick's book, which I'm sure is going to be amazing. And, Rick, thank you for being on. That was such a great conversation. Now, as usual, we end the podcast asking the guests in terms of what they want from the audience. So what is something you ask from the audience?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak on your podcast. If I can share just this message with the audience, it's very important for the audience to understand that success is defined by ourselves. Success is defined by ourselves. It doesn't matter what occupation, it doesn't matter how much net worth, it doesn't matter what assets we have. Just define your own success. find happiness, find kindness, and be a contributor to society. I believe the opposite of success is not failure. The opposite of success is quitting. The opposite of success is quitting. The journey to success includes failure. There are checkpoints where you're going to fail. But if you fail, fail hard. If you fail, fail fast and get back up. Because one day you'll achieve success. And the final message is, whatever I've achieved in my life, it's a blessing. I'm grateful, and it's just a blessing. Now, I will share with all of you, if I can achieve it, any one of you can. Any one of you can. The odds were so hard growing up. The odds in my industry was so difficult. The fact that we went from where we are to where we are today, and to be able to share our story and help so many people, find your purpose, find your why. But if I can do it, I guarantee anyone can do it, as long as they're focused, intentional, and they believe in themselves.
Thank you, Rick, for being on today. Really, really appreciate it. And thank you, audience, for continuing to support us and listen to us. And Rick, as you said, right, you want to see Asians doing different things. Guess what? I'm an Asian podcaster.
That's amazing.
And, I hope everyone continues to enjoy our podcast and great conversations we're having. Stay tuned to next week. Next week, I will have Brad Levy, the CEO of Symphony Technologies, on. Brad and I will talk about his amazing career and entrepreneur journey, and also talk about the world of data and what that means for all of us. Stay tuned. Speak to you next week. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Kiet.